Gather round, dads, it's time for a tale. Hand me a book and a warm pint of ale. Let's discuss writing and the literary gods with Dan Roberts on the Dadlit Pod.
Welcome to the Dadlit Pod, the literary podcast for people who used to have to walk 16 miles in the snow to school every day. Tonight I'm joined by James Wade. He is an award-winning author of Beasts of the Earth, All Things Left Wild, and River Sing Out. He is the youngest novelist to win 2 Spur Awards from the Western Writers of America and the recipient of the MPIBA's prestigious Reading the West Award. I can't wait to find out what that is. James' work has appeared in Southern Literary Magazine, The Bitter Oleander, Writer's Digest, and numerous additional publications. James lives and writes in Texas Hill Country with his wife and children. His new novel, Narrow the Road, from Blackstone Press, is a gripping coming-of-age odyssey of a young man's quest to reunite his family. But that adventure takes on life-altering consequences as he travels the wild of 1930s East Texas, where he faces both danger and opportunity, which grows as thick as the pines. Now, and before I get started, and I'm going to say this again, Dadlit Pod listeners, the good people at Blackstone, for a first time ever, have offered us, the Dadlit Pod, our own discount code. You can order a print copy of James's book, Narrow the Road, using the code DADLITPOD, all caps, no spaces. That will get you 25% off a physical copy on Blackstone's website. And I will say that again, of course, because we're all about selling books here on the Dadlit Pod. But first, James Wade, welcome to the Dadlit Pod.
Hey man, thank you for having me. This is great. I'm excited. We don't get a lot of we don't get a lot of our own lane thing, dads, like so then you get dad and lit. Come on, man. That's probably 80% of my life right there is dad lit. So
Yeah, it's a growing percentage of my existence as well. So am I to understand, because I've had a number of Southern authors on the Dadlit Pod, which I love because anytime we can get out of the grips of New York City and talk to authors who are not, occupying the lofts and back alleys of Brooklyn, writing of their own sort of navel-gazing adventures. I'm always thrilled to do so. And of course, I've had a number of Texas authors and Arkansas authors. And so tell me what it is that James Wade writes.
man, if I could figure that out, it would probably help my marketing so much. Here's the problem with trying to figure out what I write is that I'm from East Texas, and
Mhm.
East Texas is more aligned culturally and even like topography, flora, and fauna with Alabama than it is with the rest of Texas. So there's a line somewhere in like central East Texas probably that once you get west of that, you're in the Southwest, right? You've got
Mhm.
cacti, you've got cowboys and all that, plains and desert. But east of that, it's you might as well be in like the old Dixieland South or whatever. And so I kind of grew up right in the divide area, which is East Texas, and
Mhm.
then I moved out to Central Texas, and so now I'm even closer to the southwestern part. And my first novel was a pure Western, and then since then I write what I think is Southern Gothic fiction. But because I wrote that one Western, and because I often wear a cowboy hat, and because I'm from Texas, I get put in the Western box a lot, which is fine because those are great folks, great books. But I do think of myself as primarily a Southern novelist, more so than a Western novelist.
Okay, so what would you say? Because in and to give everyone some perspective, I read Narrow the Road, and Narrow the Road tells a post World War One beginning of the Depression tale of what was then a sort of dissolving economic existence. This the kind of death of the family farm and the initiation that would come from sort of FDR and the New Deal of the more expansive corporatized farming structure that would come out of the sort of consolidation right before everyone got in their cars and drove to California.
That's right.
Now, at the same time, there are some people who punch a monkey in the book. So that's the interesting part. Now, I Blackstone had suggested that there was a noir element, which I can also see, and I'm not familiar with Southern Gothic. This is all to say that James's books are an interesting experience. There's sort of a vibrant, how would I describe it? It reminds me of the interludes when Mark Twain sends someone down the Mississippi, mixed with a sort of noir-esque uh, uh, culture of grit. It reminds me a lot of what a guy named Dan Russell from Arkansas told me was grit lit, combined with sort of the kind of mystical river, weird interlude elements of Mark Twain. Would you say that's fair?
Oh, I think that's perfectly fair. I mean, I
Yeah.
think you could probably throw a lot of labels on there, and Gritlit is definitely. I didn't mention that one, but that's one that I've heard a lot as well
Hmm.
about my books. But yeah, I mean, I look at it less about like where it fits in the genre and more where it fits, like what you're talking about, like what authors does it remind you of, and certainly like I've gotten a very undeserved Cormac McCarthy a lot, and I think that's just because people only know of Cormac like when it comes to like a certain genre of literature. I think especially that kind of more masculine grit lit. It's like that's his name just pops up because everybody kind of knows who he is.
Yeah.
But I think William Gay, which is also one
Okay.
I've gotten. I think William Gay is probably like the closest uh, semi-modern writer that I relate to, and that I try to emulate a little bit. And so yeah, I would be happy in that category. But again, I just like you said, there's kind of a lot of different elements, and while I call it Southern Gothic, I could definitely see some noir. That's good to know that my publisher said that, so I
Yeah,
can know
just in
I
case.
can know where their heads at. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's like I've never once sat down to write and thought like, okay, now what genre is this story about to be in?
Yeah.
You just sit down and you write the story that you feel like you need to tell, and then let everybody else deal with that. That's like the business side. That's where does it go on the bookshelf, and man, if I could ignore all that, I would. Unfortunately, like today
Hmm.
in today's publishing world, like there's maybe like 10 authors that can just write. Everybody else has to also market and be involved in all that stuff. But yeah, I'll take whatever people give me. So yeah, Gritlit for sure. Mark Twain, love it. Keep it coming. I'll use that sometime.
Yeah, I think it's definitely for men. I don't think there's any question about it. It reminded me. Oh my goodness. Well, everything that takes place in the Depression reminds me of Voices of Protest, which is the book about Father Coughlin and Huey Long, and sort of the what was then kind of the political deconstruction that was going on at that point. The combined migrations of African laborers going north and the independent small farmers just pulling up stakes and headed out west. And so that always reminds me of that. but that's more of a history book. What inspired you to write a book about a young man seeking out, says this is the book, seeking out his father, who was part of the bonus army in Washington, in the midst of the early 30s and having a very prominent chimpanzee in the work. Because
Um,
the chimpanzee is very meaningful. It's on the cover,
right, right. Yeah, I
and
mean,
and
it.
it interested me.
I appreciate that. Listen, that is one of those things where uh, it was not. It didn't start out that way by any means. So
Oh.
the weird amalgam of everything that came together. I had written a novel called Hollow Out the Dark. That was my most recent novel before Narrow the Road, and
Hmm.
it was set in the same time period in roughly the same location, just a few counties north in East Texas. And basically, in researching that novel, I just there came across so much great material that I was not able to fit it all into Hollow Out the Dark. And one of the things were these traveling medicine shows, and
Hmm.
just the links that they would go to sell basically snake oil. And so that, I kind of had that on like one part of my brain. And then I had always, for years now, I've wanted to write about the town of Manning, Texas, which is now just a historical marker. But at the time, 100 years ago, it was a thriving sawmill town in East Texas, and that's where my great grandmother was born. And
Hmm.
so I have, when my grandfather passed in 2016, I was going through his stuff and I found this wonderful kind of just, I don't know, self-published little magazine from folks that had lived in Manning, and they wanted to like kind of keep a record of what day-to-day life was like and how it was growing up there. And so I read through that. I was just fascinated by it, and I thought, man, I really want to try to translate that to the page if I can. But I think that so those two things I was holding space for, but I think the heart of this book and what I really wanted to write about was a journey.
Hmm.
I think that William's journey in this book is just a stand-in for everyone's journey, man. Like mine, but kind of everyone. Like I just think we're hardwired, not just as men, but as humans to feel the need to go on some kind of journey, whether it's physical, whether it's spiritual. In this case, it's a little bit of both. And so when we do this, like we're seeking something, right? We're seeking some kind of meaning or peace or pacification, even. And so William is he's trying to find his father, hoping that his father can help him with everything that's gone wrong at home. His mother's ill, the farm is failing, all of these things. But he's also kind of like that's his reaching out to a higher authority, right? Like he just wants someone
Hmm.
to come in and save the day, and that is yes, that's kind of a childhood innocence and naivety, but at the same time, I mean, as adults, how many times have we wanted someone to just come in and like during tough times and give us a hand, advocate for us, just be there. And so I think we can all still relate to that, even past that kind of like loss of innocence moment. So anyway, it's about journeying. It's about William's journey, and on that journey, I think he discovers that his own self worth and his own grit and tenacity is far greater. His inner strength is far greater than he maybe gave himself credit for. And then also that he does need help, and it is okay to ask for help and to seek it out. But a lot of times that help comes from places or people that maybe we don't didn't think of in the beginning or didn't realize. And so for William, it's his friends, the friends he starts with, the friends he makes along the way. And so those all kind of come together to be the grand metaphor or the grand lesson of the novel. I'm of the old school like literary tradition where like everything needs to be a big ass metaphor, for something.
Well,
And
yeah, I would. Yeah, that definitely. Now that you've articulated it that way, that comes through pretty strongly. I think one of my favorite points is where you have a person reflecting upon how the the scientists or the students from the ag school are going to come in and show them how to plow properly. And at the same time, they're going to come in and kill all their cows to
Right.
save the price of cows. And there's almost it almost sort of sums up the looking for a higher power that could very easily lead you to disaster or to sort of grown up revolution almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this started as, and it didn't end up as seamless as I probably imagined it. But what novel does, I think that's part of the fun of writing novels is you start with this ideal that's perfect and flawless, and then you just screw it up for 80,000 words, and then you try to get you try to publish the least screwed up version, but like it's never going to be the thing you initially wanted it to be. But one of the things I initially had in my mind when I was writing this was very much so William's father as almost like this deity role, like where everyone in the town thinks he's this hero. And William thinks that he can, just solve everything. And then as he goes on this journey and comes across his father's journal and begins to read and all these things, he starts to realize that like, oh, maybe there is no silver bullet answer, and maybe I'm gonna have to do some of this myself. And yeah, I don't know, I think that's one of like the big parts of journeying, right? McCarthy has the quote that's like there's there's no fun to be had at the pub as much as there is on the road there. And I love that. Like it's like I think we set expectations for things that are just not sustainable, and then we learn on the way there like, oh, okay, this is actually a little more realistic. And I think that's part of life, man. Like that is part of the loss of innocence, right? Like right now my kids think that like I could lift the house if I wanted to. And they're not going to think that forever, right? They think I have the answer to every question. They're not going to think that forever. And so yeah, it's just as we gain knowledge, we lose innocence, man. Ignorance is bliss for sure. All of the cliches are somewhat true.
So when it was there, you bring this up, and I think as we become dads, and I've certainly had this experience, you sort of realize as you do it that the person who did it for you probably didn't know what they were doing either. I think
Yeah, I mean,
there I think there are two ways to go. You either say, "Oh, my parent was a genius and I'm just at a loss against it," versus my experience, which is, "Oh man, boy, this is gonna be a walk in the park. I could do this. I could do this soaking wet better."
no, I think for me, like I had a you know a troubled childhood, let's call it that. Growing up in poverty in East Texas, and alcoholic, abusive father. Like I
Mm.
don't have like the typical male role model to compare myself to. So like it was in a maybe in like a a little bit of a dark humor way. It was like I didn't really have big shoes to fill, so like I'm good either way. But with
Oh, you feel good.
Yeah, yeah, but like with
Yeah.
my kids, it's come so naturally in a way, and I don't mean like that they're perfect kids or that I'm crushing it as a dad, but I was worried that I was going to be so just terrified and anxiety ridden every single day with like how do I take care of this thing. And then all of a sudden it just, I don't know, it just happened kind of naturally, man. It was like the closest thing to magic I've ever come across. And I had buddies tell me, like, that were already dads, like, hey, when you hold that kid the first time, it's just going to hit you. And I was like, yeah, okay, because I'm a skeptic, man. I'm a realist.
Mhm.
Some folks will call me a pessimist. I like to say I'm a realist. And I just thought, you know what? I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. And then it did, man. Like I was holding my
Mhm.
daughter. She's 5 years old now. And I remember it like it's yesterday, holding her as soon as she was born, and I was like, oh shit. Like this is the moment. This is what people
Mhm.
talk about, man. And from that moment I was just like, A, wrapped around her finger, but also it's just like, yeah, I don't know, it changes something about your DNA. It reaches, like locking eyes with a baby, it like reaches into your brain and changes the chemical makeup somehow. I became, not that I was like a completely irresponsible person, but I became like immediately just way more responsible, way less lazy, because you just don't have a choice. Like, and I don't
Yeah.
know, there's no better way to describe it, is than you just don't have a choice, and you just become the person that you're, the parent that you're supposed to be. And so, I've got my daughter's 5 now. I have a son who's 1.5. And honestly, like watching them grow, as frustrating as it is sometimes, the lack of sleep and just the tantrums and all that stuff, watching them grow has been a delight, man. Like I'm not one of those people that, I'm sure I'll be sad when they're grown and I look back at like baby pictures or whatever, but each age that they hit is like a new, it's like every day they're learning something new. And
Mm.
so it just keeps everything so fresh and exciting and like just magical. I mean, they're so happy. And maybe you've seen this with your own kids, but like my kids don't have a hard life by any means, but they also just have a pretty normal life. It's not like incredibly
Yeah.
special, and yet they get so excited by everything all the time, and that's something that like I haven't experienced or even remember, and I'm like,
Mm.
wow, like, so you can get like that happy just from me saying like, hey, let's go jump on the trampoline, and like to see that level of just absolute joy is really cool. It's just like really cool to be a witness to that, is to see them every day. And of course the flip side is true too, right? Like they say no to ice cream or something and they can act like the world is ending. And so it's just, it really is fascinating to watch these emotions as they go up and down and as they start to figure out the highs and lows of the world. It's like, I mean, I've got to parent them, but also I'm just kind of like, I'm kind of like a spectator and I'm just watching going, wow, like look at these little humans, and like this is how we become who we're going to become. And I don't know, man, it's a privilege for sure.
So, do you think it has affected your writing and the topics you write about and how you write about them?
100%. So you said something earlier about how, we look at things different once we become parents. And so in my first few books, before we had my daughter, and then even probably after we had her, but when she was still pretty much just an infant, I have these just awful father figures. They're either absentee, or they're either apathetic or an absentee, or they're like straight up abusive, like all of these things. I mean, it doesn't take like a magnifying glass to like look at my novels and see what I talk to my therapist about, right? And so but as my
Same,
daughter
same.
grows, yeah, as my daughter grows, I'm like, she, I'm wondering kind of a little bit, what is she gonna think of me when she reads the books? What is she gonna think of me? What's my legacy to her gonna be, as like what kind of dad I am and all these things. And what I realized is like she's never really gonna know how complicated my inner life is, or even outer life right now, because kids can only grasp so much. She's not gonna really ever realize those things.
Mhm.
And even if I try to explain it to her when she's older, even if she were to come across diaries of mine or something like the way William does in this book, it's really hard to get all the nuance of what someone else's life is and is like, and certainly with there being a generational gap and all that stuff. So fast forward to Narrow the Road, and all of a sudden, rather than make Thomas, William's father, any of the negative qualities that I've made parental figures in the past, all of a sudden he's a much more complicated character, to where yes, he is not there, but when we read his journal entries, we start to realize, wow, he's haunted by a lot of his own demons as well. And William even starts to see how similar their kind of feelings are and their paths might be. And so yeah, I wanted to kind of have a more complicated uh character that was a little harder to just slap a label on and say, hey, this is an antagonist or whatever. And
Mhm.
so I think that's definitely like a gut reaction to like parental protectionism of, you know what I mean? Like I'm covering my own ass to a degree. I'm like, look, kids, like, you know, parents are complicated, so I hope I did it right. But yeah, there's definitely some more sympathy for parental figures just in general, because now you know like just how crazy and complicated it is. Like it's the biggest, most important thing you'll ever do.
James, what is some dad lit Southern fiction that people can also pick up after they pick up your book, Narrow the Road, using the code, the Dadlit Pod or Dadlit Pod, in all caps? See, I'm gonna try and sell some books,
I
selling some
love it,
books.
man. I love it. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I don't I don't exclusively read Southern Lit, but that is what I read most of. And it
Hmm.
does seem like there is always like a complicated father figure in a lot of these novels. So like the first thing that came to mind was like Look Homeward Angel by Thomas Wolfe. You know, Old Man Gant in that book is just absolutely insane and yet also kind of adored in a lot of ways. And I think that that is one of the themes of Southern literature is having your kind of young male characters have this complicated legacy figure where you know, the everybody on the one hand like respects and adores them, but then maybe you know the truth type thing, or like at home it's different or something.
Well,
But
what
you
is
know,
it? Faulkner's what's the Faulkner book about the dueling in
oh, with the Compton family.
yeah.
Oh goodness, what is the title of that?
I can't remember. What is the title of it?
Yeah, because he wrote, you know, multiple novels dealing with that family in different generations from it,
Yes.
but yeah, there always exactly. There always is like this complicated father figure. One that has stood out to me for many years, in part just because I love this book, but also in part because the character plays such a small like percentage
Hmm.
role in the book and yet has such an outsized impact is All the Pretty Horses. So Cormac McCarthy didn't um you know, didn't write a ton of father figure stuff until he wrote The Road, which is entirely you know, about a father and a
Oh
son.
yeah.
And I mean, and probably like the best example I could give, it's not Southern fiction, but the best example I could give of a book about a dad. I mean, that book really encompasses what it feels like, in my opinion, to be a dad is The Road, and the links you would go to protect your child. But in All the Pretty Horses, which he, you know, wrote 20 plus years before that, or 15 plus years before that, he writes John Grady Cole's father as this accepted an absentee father, but like it's very accepted, and you can tell that John Grady still thinks the world of him. But he's a veteran of the Korean War. He is a poker player, a gambling addict, essentially. He's got lung cancer, and yet refuses to quit smoking. He only has a couple of scenes early on in the book, and he basically represents John Grady is trying to hang on to this idea of the past and like the good old days or whatever, which, you know, arguably the book kind of says that that's not even a thing. And if it ever was, it doesn't exist anymore. But his father kind of represents his last plea before he takes matters into his own hands. And he's like, you know, can you save this ranch for me? And his father is like, no, I'm not gonna. I'm resigned, and I'm not gonna do anything. And I think that was like a really, I think that just jump started the whole book, and jump started John Grady's like, well, I've got to do this myself, and I'm gonna be the boy hero type thing that McCarthy wrote so well. But that just has always fascinated me. Is you just have a couple of scenes, a couple of very brief and not necessarily intimate conversations and you see the young person look to the older person for some kind of guidance, advice, a lifeline, and then when it doesn't come, it's like, okay, I've got to try to do this myself, and you know, you could argue that's good or bad, but the ensuing adventure is definitely a little bit of both. So So yeah, that father figure always stuck with me as just really subtle and yet really, really powerful.
Yeah, I think the book we were looking for with Faulkner was The Sound and the Fury,
Yeah, the Sound and the Fury,
which
absolutely.
is about a son whose father leaves him behind to go fight the Civil War, and then comes back and effectively becomes a uh, what would you call it? The precursor to the Klan, basically.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
The and joins up with them, and then the son personally tries to sort of remove himself from this culture of fighting and violence, and is juxtaposed against both his father and his cousin, who for some reason there's always seemed to be a suggestion that he was supposed to marry his
Right.
cousin, but his father ends up marrying his cousin to redeem her. But yeah, I think that's interesting. What are there any Southern novels where the father goes on a journey
I mean, if you,
other than The Road?
right, yeah,
The
right.
Road, yes.
Um, I'm sure there are. One that comes to mind is Provinces of Night by William Gay. Um, there is the main character is still a young person kind of coming into his own, but his father goes on a journey in that book,
Hmm.
essentially trying to track down his wife or the young person's mother, and we get to see, the chapters are split POV, and so we get to see the father's journey as he's trying to find his wife, who's essentially run out on him and gone to be with some other man, and yet he still is trying to track her down out of basically just like anger and fury. And so and but that's interesting because again, he has the one thing he's like very, very one track mind. I'm going to track down this woman.
Hmm.
And he just leaves his young son at home and just doesn't come back for months and months. And so again, that's you're picking up a theme on it. Some of the books that I read,
Yeah,
or at least remember, is it's the ones where the father's just, like, okay, we're not gonna, like, he'll be fine. Let's go,
yeah.
let's go do this thing that we want to do. And you could make the argument that in Narrow the Road, it's a similar setup. However, I think that Thomas Williams' father he really does want to be home. He just doesn't think that being home is good for his family. So while his
Yeah.
family really wants him home, he's like, no, trust me, it would be worse if I was there. And so I think that's an interesting, I think that's an interesting topic where, you know, what is best, is it being there, or is it kind of dealing with your toxicity and dealing with your own issues, and then trying to come back, a better man. But in the meantime, you've left your family on their own, and I think that's something that you saw a lot more obviously in historical fiction, is because travel was far less accessible, and because societally, culturally, whatever, there was just kind of less consequence to a
Yeah.
guy going out for cigarettes and, being gone for 2 years and then coming back like nothing happened or whatever. Or,
Hmm.
or to some degree, that's obviously an exaggeration, but yeah, I don't know. I love reading, and that's why I think I'm so drawn to authors like Thomas Wolfe, William Gay, Cormac McCarthy, and then, like, let's throw Flannery O'Connor in there. I would say Steinbeck as well. Like these
Hmm.
these writers that create these almost stoic Southern characters, that we see them go on these physical journeys, but much of their emotional journey is left for our interpretation by their actions. So there's not none of those writers write with a great deal of interiority, like just on the craft side of things. So there's not a lot of he was thinking this or he imagined this. It's like it's all just comes down to the action. And so any interiority, you usually get it in the form of some omniscient, all-knowing narrator or something like that, that's not necessarily the character's inner voice. And I love that as a reader and try to kind of emulate that a little bit as a writer, to where, we have moments where we see what William is thinking in Narrow the Road, but we don't. I don't want it to be too explicit because in some ways I want the reader to go through the spiritual transformation, the emotional journey with him in these moments of action and dialogue. And like at some point we should know William well enough to know what he's thinking, right? Or
Mhm.
to even to project onto him what we might be thinking. And I love that stuff as a reader. I really don't like just being told every little thing that's going through a character's head. I want there to be a little bit of stoicism and a little bit of mystery to where I'm going, okay, what are they gonna do next, right?
Mhm. So what is the well, we'll go with this because I recently drove from Houston to New Orleans, and I found that drive to be positively gorgeous. How do we convince people to go to East Texas?
I mean, look,
To
it's
go fishing and to see alligators
yeah,
and go along that beautiful coast and drive over the bayous and those sort of things. Um, I think this struck me because, of course, I read another book by another author at Blackstone, J.S. Bell, who also set his book in East Texas. And prior to that, the big East Texas things are that I can recall are Bubba Hotep
yeah, Joe Lansdale.
and yes, and his wonder and that amazing movie, the redemptive Elvis mummy piece, if you've never seen it, and the also obviously I think George Jones grew up in the Pinelands of East Texas. So, what is it about East Texas that has developed this mystique? Because I'm interested, because it definitely shows through. When I see something or I hear something set in East Texas, I know just in my mind what the author is aiming to show me. And what is it about that part of the country that has created this renewed allure of gritty poverty with a little bit of rebellion mixed in with fatalism and crime?
Yeah, I mean,
That's
honestly,
pretty much what
I
it
think
is.
that's a really good description. I think for years in the literary world, East Texas was remarkably underrepresented. I mean, you
Hmm.
basically had Joe Lansdale and that was it. I mean,
Yeah.
many years ago, you had William Humphrey was a great Southern writer who kind of worked the Northeast Texas area a little bit in his novels, but for the most part, it was just Lansdale doing his thing, and that was it.
Mhm.
And that's where you get Bubba Hotep and the Bottoms and the Thicket and all kinds of great novels. I mean, Lansdale's probably published 80 novels or something by now, but recently there has been like a renewed interest in East Texas. Attica Locke is a great writer who writes a lot about East Texas. May Cobb is writing about East Texas. She grew up in Longview area, and
Mhm.
she's got the number one show on Netflix right now with The Hunting Wives, and based on her novel that was set in East Texas. And so I think, and I wrote about this for Crime Reads a few years ago about kind of this renaissance for East Texas, and really listed all those things that you just said. Like, I think that what creates that mystique is A, it's just so unknown. Like, who the hell has
Mhm.
been to East Texas that doesn't live somewhere near East Texas? A lot of people aren't scrambling to vacation in the piney woods, and while on the one hand I could argue that like the beauty of the pine forest, the beauty of where like you're talking about that drive on I-10 from Houston to New Orleans, there's so much the flora and fauna. I mean, there are species of birds, species of plants that exist in those swamps that don't exist anywhere else in the world, let alone the country, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is one of the most fascinating, magical places. And a lot of reason for that is because it never really got too densely populated.
Yeah.
And so I
And
think
it's
that
almost subtropical.
yeah,
It's very
absolutely.
close to
Yeah,
subtropical.
absolutely. And I think that it that in itself creates a little bit of mystique. It just creates a vibe. Like Appalachia's got its own kind of
Mhm.
like, wrong turn type vibe or whatever. You get lost in the hills or the mountains and who knows if you'll come back out. And I think East Texas has a lot of that too. And on the negative side, it I think a lot of that mystique does come from the poverty. It comes from the crime. Like, you do have these wild and tragic stories. It's you've got heavy meth use, you've got notorious racist crimes. I mean, it still definitely has that lingering old South whatever, but because
Mhm.
there's no real city anywhere close to kind of bring it into the future and at least be an anchor for like progressive thinking, you're kind of behind the times there. I mean, you got Houston and you got Dallas, but those cities are, damn near 6 hours apart. And so everything kind of in between those, and then as you shift eastward into to Louisiana and Arkansas and all that, it becomes like this very dense and almost impenetrable portion of the country that doesn't have the majestic views of the Mountain West, right?
Yeah.
That's its own unique vibe, and East Texas just seems darker and it seems more secretive and like what's going on in the shadows, what's
Yeah.
going on behind the pine curtain, and so it's really ripe for crime fiction. It's really ripe for being able to create kind of your own allure, and people are not in, again, unless they've been there, they're not really going to know. Like if somebody's writing about Austin, Texas, anybody that's been to Austin, Texas, which is a lot of people, are going to go, oh, maybe you got that right, maybe you didn't, I had a different experience there. But East Texas is like singular, man. Like if you drive through the pine curtain, you have a singular experience with how tall those trees are. They block out the sun. The sun sets an hour
Mhm.
earlier, because it's so dark. If you hike the big thicket, like, you see how claustrophobic it can be. And it just creates its own, I don't know, man. It's like it's its own, it really is. It feels like its own world. And like growing up there and then going so far as like Big Bend in West Texas and seeing these great, these rocky type mountains and these long flat mesas. I felt like I was on Mars, man. Like it just felt like
Mhm.
another planet. The fact that it's in the same state is insane. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have like a perfect answer for why East Texas is kind of having this popularity right now, but I'm glad it is. I mean, it's cool, man. I want to see more of it. I want to see more artists coming out of there and representing.
That look, I cannot say enough nice things about that area from Houston, Beaumont, and east from there. And I actually really like the drive from like Texarkana, Arkansas to Dallas when you go through that ranch country,
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
which is obviously a little more wealthier, but is just beautiful. I mean, rolling hills is very pretty.
It really is, and again, it looks to me more like when I'm driving through Alabama or Georgia or even the Carolinas than it does the rest of Texas. Like it really is its own unique thing for Texas, and maybe that's part of it too. Is it is kind of the outlier of Texas, even though that's where the first Anglo settlers were in Texas. People think of Texas and they think of the West Texas plains and tumbleweeds and oil wells and all that stuff. Most people don't think of the refineries down in Beaumont or the timber
Mhm.
industry in East Texas, but yeah, that was an anchor, man, for a really long time. And a jumping off point, and it's unique and it stayed unique. I mean, we've got a different accent. I've lost mine, but the folks in East Texas don't sound like the folks in West Texas. Like those are
No,
it's two completely different worlds, man, and it's just fascinating.
So, do you think that the future of American lit is heading south and west?
Oh goodness. Uh I mean, I my
I'll say
fu-
that
my future is.
I say this because it seems to me that a lot of the authors that I talk to, particularly the men who are writing what is a literary fiction, they live in the West. They live west of Ohio, Rust Belt, Texas, the South, and the West. I'm wondering if I have this weird theory that the developing literary realm for men and the dad literary realm is not necessarily interested in the traditional New York vision of what everything should look like and how everything should go.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's correct. I'll give it a yes and like if like improv. I would say yes and that pendulum will probably keep swinging because it swung before. Like if you think back to what a lot of people consider some of the golden decades of literature, people like Woolf and Faulkner and even Hemingway, like they they weren't the New York,
Yes.
crowd.
Yeah.
But then the pendulum did swing kind of in that direction with like the Raymond Carvers and that kind of like you talked about, like they're in the high rise doing a little bit of navel gazing, or how many novels can we have about somebody walking around New York, and
It turns out a lot of
it
them.
turns out a lot.
Yeah, a
But
lot
I
of
think
them.
but I think we'll continue to see that pendulum shift a little bit, and I do agree with you. I think that right now I think that it's less interested in the typical New York publishing world, in part because the world has just globalized so much, and so that's allowed us, even just within the confines of our country, it's allowed us to have the power is still centered in New York, the power structure in publishing, but there's also publishers all over the place now, and
Yeah.
there's people who maybe the publishing house has its base in New York, but you have employees all over the country. And so because of that, you can have writers that don't feel like they need to move to New York to make it in the industry. And so with all that comes like this more, again, back to journeying, man. Like we want to,
Mhm.
like I always want to live, if I can help it, somewhere that's relatively rural and where I can go outside and go hiking and go discover something new. And um yeah, I think that as we see more of these books like come into popularity and become like, I don't know, just more prevalent, I think it will shift back. I think at some point it'll be like, oh, like another vampire book, great. Like I think it'll be, oh great, another book set in New Mexico. Wow, like how original. Whereas right now it's like there's only a handful of authors I can think of that set their work in New Mexico. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think to your point, I think we're gonna continue to see the pendulum shift that way in terms of and I would say not even just male authors, like Taya Obrit, and some other really great literary writers, who have females who have set their stuff west. Kali Fajardo Onstein comes to mind. She's National Book Award finalist, and just every time she puts something out, it sells a gajillion copies. But she's writing out of Colorado, and Erica Worth is also writing out of Colorado, and yeah, I think we're gonna really see that continue to rise. I'm a part of the Western Writers of America. I sit on their board as an elected member, and like I know that we're certainly trying to capitalize on this wave that we've seen with, we've got like the Taylor Sheridan television takeover, right? You
Yeah.
got you've got Yellowstone. Here actually, Christian Wallace, who's the co-creator of Landman, is a acquaintance of mine here in Texas. He wrote for Texas Monthly, which is like our big state magazine, and yeah, I think we're people are looking at that aesthetic more and more, right? Beyonce
Mhm.
has put out a country album, right? Like it just is kind of in vogue right now to be rural and western and have this kind of that whatever aesthetic. And it won't be for a long, you know what I mean? It just won't
Yeah.
last. And so so then it'll shift back and maybe not to New York, maybe it'll shift somewhere else, right? I know Appalachia was real hot, as they say, for a while with
Oh
all the
yeah.
music coming out of there with Sturgill Simpson and Tyler Childers, and all of a sudden you had these great poets and novelists, Silas House and others. And yeah, I think that every region, every style, every aesthetic kind of has its moment. They all exist simultaneously, and they all exist, so they're like loyal fans and they're and the locals and all that stuff. But every now and then you get to see one. I've been hearing a lot of smoke around Boise. I hear that Boise, Idaho, that might be the
Boise.
next, it might be the next artist hotbed, some folks, I've had
That
multiple people.
everyone is going to pack up from Marfa and move to Boise tomorrow. We all know.
Listen. I have it on good authority. Multiple people I know have gone to Boise and gone, you know what? It really reminds me of Austin before Austin became Austin.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, there you go. So buy real estate if you can in Boise, because 20 years from now, everybody's gonna be rolling their eyes going, God, Boise, how pretentious can you get? I mean, uh, so I don't know. I just
chasing the entire world, chasing authenticity to the point of insufferability. They're universal.
Dan, that is it. That is like you just summed up our whole cultural arc, man. Like I was trying to think the Asheville in North Carolina
Yeah.
was one that underwent that same thing where it became like this
Oh,
real trendy
Jesus.
thing, and then
Savannah,
yep,
Myrtle
Savannah, right.
Beach.
So anyway, I
Yep.
think that whatever is going to be popular 20, 30 years from now, we don't even know yet. And when it does, we'll roll our eyes. At some point, Marfa, Texas will go from being this kind of like, because it already has become eye rolling. Like,
Yeah.
it started as really cool, and now everybody just kind of rolls their eyes because you go out to the middle of nowhere and it is cool and it's beautiful, and then you go in a shop and there's a dress that's $2,000, and you're going, what, come on,
Yep.
and so, but what'll happen is if you can endure it, right, like whether you're in the New York publishing establishment or whether you're in Marfa or wherever, if you can endure that pendulum swing, then eventually it's going to come back and you're going to be cool again. You know what I mean? The,
Yes.
the key is to hold and not sell, right? And so I don't know.
It's the
I
Wall
think we
Street bets, the Wall
yeah, I
Street
think
bets
we just
literary philosophy.
that's right. I think we just work in, and but I think the point is you have to write what you want to write. Like
Yeah.
chasing trends, or chasing like what you think the market is going to want or be like. Man, that's for the birds. Like just again, if it was up to me, I wouldn't pay attention to any of that stuff, even though I do and I kind of have to, but like I just want to write. I want to write about the themes that I want to write about. I want to create the characters that I want to create. And then if people react to that, that's great. But if they don't,
Mhm.
eh, what I would rather have a book flop than write something that's just pandering or catering to a specific, trend or a specific audience, and then just feel like a fraud, really. You know what I mean? Or a hypocrite or something. Like I want my books to be as close to from the heart as they can be. And so, and I think that I look, people say they want authenticity. I don't know if that's really true. I think they want what they want, and then if it feels authentic, all the better. But yeah, I want my books to be authentic, and not because people want authenticity, but just because I want to feel like the book is authentic, because that's a great feeling, man, to create something that didn't exist until you created it, and to know that it's you and a part of you, and doesn't have shit to do with anybody or anything else, man. That is
Mhm.
to me, that's like true purpose and peace right there.
So what's next on the docket? You working on anything?
I am, and ironically enough, it is set in Marfa, Texas. Ah, how's that? How's that for a lead in? No, we
Isn't everything in Marfa,
That's
Texas?
right.
Yes.
No, in Fort Davis, Texas, which is about half an hour north of Marfa, there's an observatory there called the McDonald Observatory, and
Hmm.
it has, I think, I want to say like the third largest telescope in the world. And then in Marfa, one of the things that before Donald Judd came in and bought up a bunch of land and started putting, aluminum blocks and concrete blocks out there, is the Marfa Mystery Lights. That was kind of what it was known for. And it's depending on who you talk to, it's car headlights or it's this chemical reaction with temperature and certain elements or whatever, or it's also the spirit of Native Americans or it's, whatever, right? And the point is there's not like a super settled thing on what it is. And so I thought, why not take a stab at a little bit of like a sci-fi element? And so I'm kind of stepping out of my comfort zone, and I'm setting something in modern day Marfa. And there's like a stellar happening where some gamma rays make it into our atmosphere and react with the Marfa lights. And it's kind of bonkers, honestly, to even be writing it. And to be honest, like I'm struggling, but part of it is like that's what I want. I want to struggle. I want to be pushed as a writer and as a thinker, and to get out of my comfort zone a little bit. And plus then maybe you give it to your publisher and they have something to work with on the marketing side, right?
Hmm.
Look, I love Narrow the Road. It's not a perfect book. I don't think any of my books are perfect or even close to it, but I've written a lot of rural historical fiction, and that's a tough sell, Like I love my publicist. I love the marketing folks at Blackstone. They work their tail off, but they're starting at a little bit of a disadvantage. And so I kind of want to give them something that they can maybe, sink their teeth into a little bit. And so we'll try that with the next one. But the most important part is I want to make it me. I want to make it authentic. I want it to still feel like a James Wade novel. And so that's kind of where the struggle is. But I mean, iron sharpens iron, man. So like let's, I'm
Hmm.
gonna read as many great authors as I can, and I'm gonna try to do as good of a job as I can with this book. And that's all you can do, man. Like I listen to some of the writers on your show, and that's kind of the consensus is it's writing is hard. Like there are people who love to write, there are people who hate to write, and they can be equally good, but it's still difficult. It's still a tough thing to do, and you put so much of yourself into it. And so to step out of your comfort zone and still try to be yourself, that's gonna be tough. But I'm sure I'll come out the other side as a better writer and hopefully a better person.
Well, let's end on that. James Wade, he's going to come out on this a better person. I think you're a really
Mar-
nice guy.
mark the tape right there, and
Yeah,
we'll,
mark the
we'll
tape
revisit
right
it.
there. So anyway, I will bring up again because the kind people at Blackstone, James's James's publishers gave us a code that you can enter. It is all caps, Dad Lit Pod, no spaces, and you can get James's book, Narrow the Road, for 25% off on their website and find out if the Dad Lit Pod can sell some books. And I've read it. It's a fascinating book. There is a monkey. I'm not going to say any more because that would ruin it. Big vibes of Twain down the river. Very, very big vibes of Twain down the river. Plus some, some critical insights into the nature of Depression era East Texas. I mean, I don't know what more you could expect.
No, that's perfect. You heard it here first. Dan Roberts says James Wade is Mark Twain. That's what I said.
Yes, yes, that
There
James
you go.
Wade, new
All
Mark
right.
Twain,
Yeah. I'll go let my
East
wife know.
Texas.
We don't have to worry. We don't have to worry about money anymore, honey.
Thank you, James. This has been the Dadlet Pod.
Our time together has come to an end. It's time to return to your wife, kids, and friends. It's time to pick up those books you forgot while you wait for the next dead lit part.